Hello and welcome to the second ever episode of Vibes for Capita. Today I'm joined by my friend Willa Hancock to interview our first guest ever on the show. He's an award-winning filmmaker, somebody whose work and mentality I look up to a ton in my own career. He is the writer and or director of movies such as The Blind Side, The Founder, The Rookie, and as of January 29th, 2021, meaning it's already out, The Little Things, starring Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, and Jared Leto. So you guys need to go check that out on HBO Max or in select theaters. We have the legend, John Lee Hancock, everyone. Hope you enjoy this interview.
Legend. My goodness, I want to come back on your podcast sometime again.
I know. So how did you get your start as a writer in Hollywood?
Oh, boy.
When it all started.
That's a long story. I can give the short version. I was practicing law in Houston when I first started writing scripts. I'd been writing mostly short fiction and plays before that. And I had a script that I wrote that was accepted to a Sundance Institute satellite program in Austin, Texas. And there were 8 of us that were accepted into this kind of high-profile boot camp, if you will, for 3 or 4 days. And Frank Danielle, who was Roman Polanski's film teacher and the head of the film school at Columbia and at USC, was doing this weekend with us. And he ripped us to shreds, every one of our scripts. But it made me think that I was not untalented. Because I'd been selected for this. Mm-hmm. And so I decided I was going to move to Los Angeles. I was choosing between Los Angeles and New York. I had more friends in New York. I really didn't know anybody in Los Angeles. But I thought I would probably rely on my friends in New York if I moved there and not get as much done. And so I kind of wanted a more Spartan experience. And so moved out here to California, really not knowing anyone. And, just started writing, had a little money saved up, but then started doing PA work and working on productions, and then just kept writing. And had a theater company and went from there.
And how old were you at the time?
I think I moved out here when I was 28, I want to say.
So out of college?
Out of college, out of law school, had practiced law for 3, maybe 4 years.
What was like your first big job, like your big break, I guess? Because you did PA work for a few years, saving up while you were writing on the side.
I had a zillion odd jobs just to pay the rent in my crappy Hollywood apartment. And I worked for a fashion photographer, doing casting for him and also painting his photo cove and things like that. I did a lot of PA work, on eventually more commercials, because if a commercial you could work for 3 weeks and pay your rent and then have 2 or 3 weeks off to write. Mm-hmm. Whereas a movie, if you were a PA, you were kind of stuck on it for month after month after month and you didn't have time to write. So when I fell into commercials, that was the main thing. But
so that you could just do weekly jobs. And
I got to the point where I'd worked enough where I could call producers and say, my rent's due in 5 days, you have anything? And they'd say, yeah, come on over to Raleigh Studios, we're prepping a thing and I'll put you on. Yeah. So that was that. But there was no, I guess you would say the biggest break was when I wrote A Perfect World, and then very quickly Clint Eastwood and Kevin Costner were attached, and Clint was about to win an Academy Award for directing Unforgiven, and Kevin was the biggest movie star in the world who had also won a director Oscar for Dances with Wolves. So that was a big break. But I think there were breaks along the way. I just felt like every step of the way I was getting a little better at what I was doing, and the theater company and writing and directing plays for my friends who were actors and having some success there was a victory. Getting an agent was a victory. So it's a lot of little victories, and then all of a sudden there was the big one with, from a studio standpoint, getting a big movie made.
Mm-hmm. I have a question that I could ask my dad.
Please, let's hear it.
So, as a very lucky recipient of your advice over the course of my 20 years of life, what advice do you have for any 21-year-olds or anybody who's at a point in their life where they're trying to figure out what they want to do and they're reaching kind of a roadblock and they can go one of 2 ways and it's a tough decision? What advice would you have?
I would say, first of all, figure out what it is you love and do for free. And then see if you can find employment so that you can pay the bills, keep the lights on in that field somewhere. I think the worst thing you can do, at least from a creative person's perspective, is say, well, it's just work is just about making money to pay the bills, and then I'll enjoy the rest of my life. I'll spend 12 hours a day at a job that I really don't love to enjoy the rest of that day when you're sleeping 8 of it. So you're saying I'll be happy for 4 hours a day. That said, it's a luxury when you can find employment in an arena where you would work for free, that you love it that much. So, but the first step I think is to cast a wide net around all the things you enjoy and the things that you would find challenging in a good way, and that you feel like there would be growth. As opposed to, I mean, there are some people who, when they're 8 years old, they know they want to be a doctor. Okay, good for them. That's fantastic. I didn't have that luxury. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I liked to write. I didn't know anyone in Texas City, Texas, who was a writer or who had a parent or a grandparent that was a writer. As far as I knew, people who wrote books and made movies were from, somewhere in outer space. I mean, I'd never met one. I knew they existed, but I had never met anyone. So, and in fact, there was the kid I knew from a rival high school in another town whose dad was an astronaut who had been to the moon. So I knew somebody whose dad had been to the moon, but I knew anybody whose dad or mother was a writer. Wow. So it was far more likely to end up on the moon than in Hollywood.
Out of Texas City.
Yeah.
Did you ever find it weird when you were trying to monetize your art, I guess? Or were you just stoked that you were able to?
No, I mean, well, the thing is you want to monetize it because you want to do it for a living.
Yeah.
You want to, if you don't monetize it, it's a hobby, and that can be great too. I mean, I sometimes love to paint. I don't think I'm ever going to be able to monetize that, and that's okay. It's just something for me.
Would you say that there are any pieces or scripts that you've written that you would not want to monetize just because there's an element that's too personal, or that you felt like you would want to keep just for your own thoughts?
No, honestly, I make that decision early. I mean, if there's something that I felt was too personal or a personal story that I didn't want to dig into, then I probably wouldn't write the script. But the thing is, you have to understand, when I started writing and continually, you don't think about this as, I've got to write today to make money. It's never that. You want to write or create stories because you love doing that, and it fulfills you. The fact that you can also make a living at it is the cherry on top.
So you do a lot of movies based on real events. What is kind of not the criteria, but what really inspires you to take a story and be like, I want to turn this into a film?
Well, one, I'm no more. I've made a lot of movies that are based on real, true lives and people, but those were just the movies that got made. And you have to go back and look at it. And Hollywood likes to make those movies because there's already awareness about a person. Let's say if we're talking about Saving Mr. Banks, which is about P.L. Travers, and her 2 weeks spent in Hollywood with Walt Disney. I mean, nobody knows who P.L. Travers is necessarily unless you're a big Mary Poppins fan. Everybody knows who Walt Disney is, and Disneyland and the Disney studios and all that. So there's already awareness. The thing from a marketing standpoint is it can cost millions of dollars to create awareness for a movie. Not desire to see, just I know what it is. Mm-hmm. Millions of dollars. So if people already know what it is, they know the movie Mary Poppins, they know who Walt Disney is, you've created awareness for $0.
Yeah. So
they tend to, or if it's Ray Kroc and the founder for McDonald's, who doesn't know McDonald's?
Yeah.
The brand's already there. It's one of the biggest brands in the world, so they don't have to spend millions of dollars in advertising to create awareness of this. They just put the big M out there, and everybody knows it's about McDonald's and Ray Kroc. But those are just the movies that get made. I mean, the Little Things that's coming out is just a story I made up. A Perfect World, my first movie that got made, was just a story I made up. So I enjoy those too. I approach it like a good story is a good story. When you're dealing with a well-known person. I mean, the first movie I kind of directed was The Rookie about Jimmy Morris. And nobody really knew that story. Jimmy was not Ray Kroc. Jimmy was not Walt Disney. So it makes it fun to give an audience, open the door for an audience to see someone they didn't know before. When you're talking about Walt Disney, I wouldn't necessarily want to make a movie about Walt Disney. It would be too big, and what part do you grab onto? Yeah. But Saving Mr. Banks, written by Clay Marcel, is 2 weeks in the life of Walt Disney. It's not Walt Disney. It's about P.L. Travers. It's her entire life and 2 weeks that she spent with Walt Disney. So that gave you entree to the brand, if you will, and some interesting stuff between the two of them. But it was really about something unexpected. And I think if you're going to do, it used to be this thing they did biopics back in the day, and it would be birth to death, cradle to grave biographies of some person, and they're great. Don't get me wrong. They fell out of favor because people felt like it was becoming by rote a little bit, and they were young, and this happened to them, and this was tragic, and then they're this, and then they had this break, and then at the end they're old and die or whatever. So people started, and I think for a smart reason, focusing on one thing, like doing a cradle to grave for Martin Luther King, for instance, would be a massive task, and how do you fit everything in? I'm gonna shrink wrap his life. Maybe it's the day before he, is killed. Maybe it's the day before the march, and whatever it is, something where you can bring in all elements of his life, and thematically you kind of understand it without having to show everything about his life. It's because just a glimpse in. So famous, and there's so much to tell, and it's an onerous duty to try to tell a big story like that, because you're going to leave out something that's important. You have to. A movie's 2 hours or 2.5 hours or whatever.
So, what was the process like early on when you were making The Little Things, when you started writing it? And
well, you guys weren't born yet, for starters. I wrote it. I came up with the idea in 1992 and wrote it in 92 and 93, I believe. A Perfect World had been written and was going to go into production, but Clint had another movie to do first, and so I had downtime, and people had really liked the script, and so Steven Spielberg came to me and said, what if we do a blind picture deal? And which means Warner Brothers will pay to have me write something for Steven to direct, because Steven was a big fan of A Perfect World. And so I said, that sounds great. I had no idea what a blind picture deal was, but I was all in if they were going to pay me, and I was going to get to work with Steven, which was great. Mm-hmm. So we pitched ideas back and forth, and I came up with this idea. And then I wrote a long outline, and I sent it to him. This was before, I didn't have a computer. There were no emails. You had to fax pages. So you'd put it through a fax machine, and I was sending it to him over in Europe somewhere where he was filming or editing Schindler's List, which is an amazing movie. And he read it and said, this is really, really good, but it's such a dark world that I don't think I can do back-to-back movies in this amount of a dark world. Mm-hmm. So, which I completely understood. Clint was attached for a minute. Warren Beatty was attached for a while. Then Danny DeVito, when he was directing movies, was attached. So it almost got made several times. And then when I started directing, Mark Johnson, who had been the producer from the start, started bugging me to read it and say, we should do The Little Things. We should do The Little Things. It's a great script. And I just felt like it was, you were little. You were, by that time when I directed The Rookie, you were a baby. It was the same year you were born. So I just felt like that it was too dark a world to live in for a couple of years with small children. Yeah. So I pushed it down the road, and then, Mark would ask every 2 or 3 years, and I would say no, and I hadn't read it in forever. And then, you guys went off to college, and Mark said, you don't have any more excuses, so you can't, or you got to find a new one. You can't use that one anymore. So I opened it and with some trepidation read it and really liked it and thought, I think it's good. So, I did a quick little polish on it, and we sent it to Warner Brothers, and magically, after 28 years, it got made.
So you got to experience it through a new lens, like through a director's lens.
First of all, I got to experience through my younger self, which was kind of scary. It's because you're looking back at something you wrote that long ago, and you expect, there's going to be some young writer in this person that doesn't have experience yet and whatever, but there'll also probably be some bravery there.
Yeah.
Somebody who is writing something and doesn't know that you shouldn't do this, that, and that. They're going to just go for it.
Yeah.
So there was some of that, but I thought it was very good. I was very, very pleased with it.
Was there any of that you kept in because you liked it?
Oh, and 90%
like,
of
I wouldn't even write this now.
Well, that's two questions. One is the script is 90+% of what I wrote in 92, 93. So in other words, I didn't change a whole lot. I took some stuff out. This was before, when I wrote it, and it's set in the month of October 1990, and this is pre-DNA evidence. So it was harder. Investigations were harder on cops and homicide detectives. This is before cell phones. So, cops had to carry a roll of quarters and know where every payphone in town was, because you had to call. If you were going to call in, you had to do that.
Wow.
So it just made investigation that much harder, which I liked a lot. But what was the question? I'm sorry, I forgot. I started rambling.
There were two questions. And
And the second one is so it was back then. And also the other thing is that I had written a whole lot of forensic stuff in it, because this was before CSI, before there are so many shows on TV that have forensic and crime scene investigation stuff.
Yeah.
That we know everything about it now, because we see it. It's piped into our houses on a weekly basis, and we know all about it. We've heard the vernacular. We know all the stuff. So I had a lot of that explanation in, which I was able to just strip out, which makes the script even better, because you don't have to stop and explain, what an ultraviolet light is doing in a room.
Yeah.
Because people just
they know it.
Now.
They've seen it. They've seen it a million times. So it's great, even though this was kind of new technology back then with the super glue and all that stuff. But the other part of the question is, was there stuff that, if I were writing the script today, are there things that I would be afraid to write that I wasn't afraid to write then? And I don't know. There's one particular, it's a cat and mouse. It's not a car chase. It's a detective following a suspect, but it's played in a very 70s movie kind of way, because it's not, and we're racing around, action set piece, and because the cop doesn't want the suspect to know he's following him. So it's this cat and mouse that starts at night and goes all the way into the next day, which, is a recipe, for disaster in terms of today's audiences, because they go, we want people running around and shooting and quick cutting and all that, and it's not. But I think it's very satisfying, and I was very brave back then just to go, this is how I want to write it, and I think it's really great in the movie.
Yeah. Do you want people to expect anything going into the movie when they go to see it?
I think that, here's the thing about it. When I wrote it, I wanted to write, because I liked crime drama and I liked psychological thrillers, but I felt like in the 80s, a whole lot of them were becoming kind of paint by numbers. They usually started off really interesting, and you would have, a cop or detective or somebody on the trail trying to figure out what's happening, and there were misdirections and there were, little clues along the way, and I found that really, really intriguing. Then you'd get to the last third of the movie when the bad guy, if you will, gets identified, and the good guy, if you will, gives chase, and usually there's an action set piece, and then the good guy, kills the bad guy in some kind of morbid, unique fashion, and then it's all tied up in a bow, and we go home. And I thought that, why should the last third of those movies be the least interesting third? And so I set out to try to tell a different story of the last third. I wanted it to unravel instead of coming to a pinnacle of plot, like he got him. And so at the same time, there are elements of, a thriller and crime genre that you want the audience to embrace. So at the start, you want people to embrace this, and then slowly realize along the way that that's not kind of what we're doing,
yeah.
what it's really about. So you get people to embrace that because they like it and are familiar with it, and then take them to an unfamiliar place that hopefully isn't thumbing their nose at the audience, or cynical, but is far more satisfying. The unraveling is more satisfying than coming to a pinnacle of plot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then I have another question, but it's funny, Will's asking more questions related to the little things, and I guess I'm just asking questions for you about the creative process. But as a private person, how do you find comfort and balance with the vulnerability of creativity, of being creative?
That's a great question, because you have to develop thick skin, because you're putting your stuff out there in the world, and people are, not only reviewing it but commenting on it. And I think it's only gotten worse in the age of social media, where you honestly just can't read comments or anything like that, because there'll be an amazing movie that that somebody's just going to trash. And sometimes there'll be a very loud voice on the internet, if you will, that will trash you or your work, or say things about you or whatever. And then you meet them in a press junket, and they've got some little indie website or whatever, and you meet him and you go, I wouldn't ask this person for the time of day.
Yeah.
That's how unreliable they are.
Yeah.
But they can be an internet bully.
Yeah.
So you just can't. You've got to do what you do, please yourself first, hope that other people enjoy it, and then do your best to not worry about it. It's not easy.
Yeah.
Because you're putting yourself out there, and you're afraid. You don't know. It's kind of like sending your kid off to first grade, and you dress him up and you go, I love her. She's so smart, and look how pretty she is, and I hope everybody likes her. And then, it's up to them once they leave the door.
Yeah. Did you ever struggle with that early on?
Yeah, I would say, when the early movies, you would have the reviews would come out if the movie opened on the weekend. The reviews would come out on Friday morning, and you would just, either be really, really happy, or go, oh my gosh, they didn't get it. They didn't understand what I was trying to say. But it's always like a mixed bag, because there'll be one that loves it, and the other one goes, I didn't get it.
Yeah.
And so you just have to. And
yourself
I mean, some of the greatest movies had, not very good reviews.
Yeah. Daddy's Home.
Yeah.
Daddy's Home and Citizen Kane, I was going to say. Yeah.
Two of the same category, I'd say. So when you first started, to jump back into the little things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I love questions like that as well, though. So
Is that okay?
Please
Okay.
keep asking them. I just want to
Yes.
really go into detail. But so you did a lot of research on site, I guess.
When I wrote a rough draft of it, and then I realized that even though I knew a decent amount about police work and had done a lot of research, I needed some hands-on research. And so I was put in contact with LA Sheriff's homicide detective, Stanley White, who had helped out on some movies. He was a friend of Oliver Stone's. He had been a Vietnam vet, and was a great homicide cop for the sheriff's department. So I was put together with Stanley, who let me pretty much just shadow him for about 3 weeks to a month, where I did everything he did, and he treated me like I was, a young detective. And he took me to crime scenes, he took me to autopsies, he took me to question people in jail, he took me everywhere with him. And I would just, knowing I already had the story kind of figured out, there were certain days where he'd be talking about stuff and it wouldn't help me necessarily. It was always interesting, but it wouldn't help me. Other days he would get on something and I would start digging, and he would give me, whether it's jargon, police jargon, or, hey, a funny thing happened to me one time in Lancaster, talking about super gluing an entire house where, there were 3 people that were dead inside. Mm-hmm. And, just odd things like that I would find a way to put into the script. So he was incredibly, incredibly helpful. And then we had, as you always do, then we had 2 LAPD homicide cops, Tim and Mitzi. And they were veterans and awesome. And it's great to have them around because, one, they read the script and vet it for you and point out stuff and ask questions about things. And then also they're there to help the actors, because it's one of those things when you're playing someone, you want to be realistic. So somebody might say, I'm looking at a file and I'm answering the phone. I know how I would do it naturally, but tell me how you would look at a file. Would you flip through it? Would you set it down and do something else? Would you,
how would a cop do it?
How would a cop do it? You do this. How would you do it? And it's of real value of where would I look first? I'm into this crime scene. Where would my eyes go first? Where would I stand? How would I stand?
Yeah.
And it was really, 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 really great stuff. Hello, Ferd.
Guest appearance
By Ferdinand.
Stanley White, if you're out there.
Yeah, so we've been trying to find Stanley, who retired to Arizona, but he's dropped off the grid. And a lot of those guys do. Once they get to the retirement age, they go, and he was always an odd in the best way kind of guy. I mean, I loved him.
He's seen things.
Oh, he's seen a lot, yeah. But very upbeat guy, fun to be around. When you're eating at Denny's at 4 a.m, about to go sit in a car for 6 hours to look at another car that was stolen that may have been used in a homicide, and just hang and talk.
Wow. Yeah, so he retired and just disappeared.
He retired, and we've been trying to find him and haven't been successful so far.
For shooting the movie.
We started. Well, I mean, I gave him a special thanks at the end of the movie, so I would love for him to see the movie. Yeah.
I wonder if he's seen ads and kind of chuckles to himself thinking about it.
I don't think that he knew the name of the movie.
Was he just kind of like, hey, you're coming along with me, I'm not going to ask any questions?
Yeah. I said, well, how do you want me to dress? And he goes, dress like me. And so it was khakis and a dress shirt and a blazer. And he goes, congratulations, you're a homicide cop.
Wow. I bet after his entire career, he was just trying to just disappear and get out of the whole life. Because you've told us some pretty horrendous stories from that time when you spent researching with him.
Yeah, I mean,
just your time with him.
Yeah. My time with him was eye-opening to me. But I'm sure, like anything, when you do it long enough, you become kind of not immune to it. It still affects you, but it doesn't affect you like it does me, for instance. I mean, he bought. I remember for a good long while he lived in a really nice condo in West Hollywood, and he bought it really cheap because there was a double homicide that happened there, and no one wanted to buy it. And he kept coming back to the owner because they had to admit, there was 2 people killed in here viciously. Mm-hmm. And so he was like, well, they're not coming back for me, so this is great real estate. And so finally the owner said, just take it off my hands. I'm never going to sell this thing. Just take it off my hands. And if you buy it, and then, it'll clean it in a weird way. Yeah, somebody else has lived here. So it didn't those things didn't bother him much.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. What was it like working with Denzel, Rami, and Jared on this project?
Challenging in all the best ways. I mean, obviously they're all amazing actors, all Academy Award winners. Every actor has their own process to create a character, and they're distinct. And so spending a lot of time with all of them in prep, talking about the character, talking about the scenes, looking at the dialogue was very helpful, so that when we got to the set and we didn't have much time, we were moving very quickly. We all kind of understood what the objective was. But they're continually surprising. I mean, you don't want to, when you've got actors of that caliber, you don't want to give them too strict a lane to run in. You want to, what you have to do. It's like they're thoroughbreds, and all I'm doing is building a track and saying run around it. Yeah. In this direction, and then how they get around the track is an amazing thing to watch.
So you kind of let them decide creatively what they're up to, in the scene,
Well, we've talked about it, so we know what the scene's about, and then we'll generally kind of block it to camera.
Yeah, of course.
Because we want to capture them on camera, so they have to be in certain places, but allow them. We work together in trying to feel it out and find it out. And in my brain, I might think that, Joe Deacon, played by Denzel, spends most of his time over here. But when we get in there and start kind of saying the words and feeling it out, Denzel starts to do something, you go, no, that's better. Do that.
But is it hard to let actors run creatively in this instance because you created the characters? It's different than directing characters that are real people or that you didn't create.
Yeah, I think it's, especially when you've written it and it's your story that you created, there comes a time, and it's almost like when you write a script and you create a character, an original script, and you create a character out of whole cloth, it's almost like they're an AI robot in your brain. I mean, you've pictured them, and then an actor comes along and they're flesh and blood, and it's almost like then that robot becomes a human being and has a mind of its own. And it's still, because of discussions and things, you kind of know what you need to accomplish. And when you go awry. I remember one time on The Blind Side, there's a great moment that happens when really good actors click into a character. And it's usually not before you start shooting. It takes a few days. I mean, they're all great and everything, but it takes a few days, and you schedule for that as well. These aren't deep, dark scenes or, heavy dialogue scenes or anything like that. This is when you're driving in the car and going to here and pulling this out, and you shoot some of those kind of things first usually. Because once an actor kind of clicks in from their behavior, from the way they walk, the way they talk, everything about them, then at that point they know more about the character than you do. And it's a great day because they can't make a wrong move. Now, I remember on The Blind Side one time talking to Sandy, and she was so locked in. Everything she did was Leanne Toohey. Nothing was wrong. She couldn't make a wrong move. But there was something that happened, and I said, that is 100% Leanne Toohey. You're playing Tuesday, and I'd rather you play Wednesday, though. Just a different day. Yeah. It's the same and different. And she got that. And good actors do. You could just kind of, once you've determined what you want to accomplish in a scene, for instance, and you're all kind of start to click, then, and these guys they've done so many movies that they know, well, if I've been doing, every version of this scene I've been doing sitting down, now that we're changing it, I can't get up and walk around. I mean, it's just what it is. We block the scene, it becomes that play. But within that, there are things that you can do, once you've decided what you're doing. Mm-hmm. And it'd be a huge mistake to come in and say, no, here's the scene. You come in the door, you stand there, you're there, and you're going to come in that door, come to here, and then walk out. I mean, that's the creative part of it. I mean, who would want it? All it would be, that wouldn't be fun either, because you would have already had the movie in your head. I mean, Hitchcock was a great director, but it was very much about, he hated shooting the movies because he said it just messes them up. They're perfect in my brain. And actors come in and won't do what they won't stand exactly like I want them to stand. Yeah. Well, they're not robots, they're not cheap.
Yeah. So are you saying it was like it's a robot in your head, and then the actors come in and they make them real?
They make them a real human being. Real. Yeah. And I don't mean like a robot in terms of robotic, but I'm saying
like exactly like how
it's an AI creation of my own.
Yeah,
in a weird way in my head. And then they come in and they turn them into humans.
And they elect to do this because they want to take on that role, not just because Hitchcock wants them to take on that role.
Yeah, I mean, it was, Hitchcock was a great filmmaker, and so actors, wanted to be in there in his movies for good reason. They were good movies.
Totally, but what I'm saying is there's still like an actor does it because they are interested in obviously the creator and the project.
Yes, and most importantly, I think the character on the page.
That's what I mean. Like
yeah.
They want to be that character.
Yeah, they find that. I mean, and it's usually they're looking for the complications in a character. Good actors are. They don't have all the answers. They want to explore these characters and find answers. Ask lots and lots and lots of questions, so they can hopefully discover along the way and create this person that didn't exist before.
Yeah. Speaking of The Blind Side, what was that like for Quentin Aaron? Because he wasn't an actor, right?
Mm-hmm. He had done a little bit. He had done some PA work and set security work, and I think had been cast in a scene in the Jack Black movie.
Oh. Okay.
So he had done some.
Yeah.
He'd done some, but not very much.
Not extensively.
No.
But he still obviously was able to get super deep into that character.
Yeah. Well, part of it is, I have in my head kind of who a person is and the qualities that they have. And it's hard in a casting situation to lose that. Sometimes you do. Sometimes you'll have an idea of a character and somebody will come in and read and you'll go, I'm changing my mind.
Yeah.
I thought this woman was this, and I think it's better if she's this. I thought of her as kind of quiet, and now I think it's better that she talks a lot. Whatever it is, just those personalities. But sometimes it was very hard to cast the perfect Michael Orr because I needed someone who was massive. He was going to go on to, at the time I think we were shooting when he got drafted, so it was obvious that he was going to be playing on Sundays, and so. It's a certain size that you have to be to play left tackle. And you wanted, if you could, to find, somebody that had, some acting experience or whatever. But let's face it, you don't call an agency and say, okay, how many 6'8", 350-pound guys that are 19 years old do you have?
Yeah.
Because they have none.
That's absurd, yeah.
And the other thing is so we started doing kind of more street casting, if you will. There was a casting director in New York who had put out billboards and flyers and stuff in hip-hop clubs and in gymnasiums and all over the place and had open calls to come in and read. And so we sent out 2 scenes for all these different casting directors to have to read and put people on tape. And I remember... And then they would come to my primary casting director, Ronna Kress, who would go through them and go, no. The problem was some of the kids were good, but you go, you're not a left tackle, you're a small forward.
Yeah.
You're a basketball player. You're a beanpole. You're 6'8".
Yeah.
But you weigh 215.
Yeah. We need 350.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of that, and then there was one casting director in New York who called and said, I found your guy. And I want you to look at the tape. So, and Ronna liked it, and so sent it to me, and I saw it. And what I needed was some vulnerability. Because a whole lot of, when people would come in and read, they'd come in and have if they were from the street, like, Michael was, and they'd grown up in the projects or whatever, they had a real tough affect because that's what you need to do to survive. Mm-hmm. And so I needed someone that didn't have that. And there was something just inherently sweet about Quentin when he came in. And so he read a couple of times in New York, and then we brought him out for another reading so I could work with him. And he was really, really great, And it was his first time on an airplane.
Wow.
First time staying in a hotel. He couldn't believe it had a gym. And that the food was so good and all that. And so, we cast Quentin.
He's from New York?
Yeah. I don't know where he was born, but he was I think he lived at that time across from the Bronx Zoo with his mom.
Are there any mistakes you've made in your career or that you thought were mistakes and then they worked out in a certain way? Any big ones come to mind?
Mistakes that I thought I made, but ended up not being mistakes. I can't really think of any. I mean, I make mistakes all the time, but they were mistakes.
Yeah, okay. So,
yeah.
But I guess they've all worked out.
Yeah, the ones that weren't mistakes worked out. The mistakes usually didn't work out.
Yeah.
So.
But you don't regret those either.
Yeah. All you can do is, you choose. You could be very mechanical about selecting the projects you want to do. Like, the next thing I want to do is this because people seem to like this, so I'm going to do that to please the audience. And for me, it's always been about I don't necessarily want to repeat myself, and I want to be surprised, and I want to do because it's too. The thing people don't realize is it's a couple of years of your life. It's a long haul to direct a movie from prep through shooting through post through getting it out. So you really have to be interested. There've been a lot of scripts that are wonderful scripts that have been made into really good movies that I've turned down not because they weren't good, because they were, but because I said, I don't think that I can gin up the energy to remain as interested as I need to be for 2 years in this subject matter. Somebody else who has more interest in this will do a better job.
So you really have to make sure I'm not going to get burnt out 2.5 years from now.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is, you're waking up at 4:30 in the morning, and nobody likes to do that, unless you're a duck hunter or something, I guess. But, you're waking up at 4:30. You're working long hours. It's a lot of work. I'm not griping because it's an amazing job, but I'm just saying it's a lot. So if you're spending that much time and energy on something, you want to be fulfilled every day. You want to be surprised every day, and you want to have little victories along the way. And I think you accomplish those things by taking on something that challenges you instead of something that's like, no, I've done this, I can do this in my sleep. Well, I don't know. It's probably not going to be very good.
What do you think is like the hardest you've ever worked for a movie or a show or just any given time period where you were like, wow, I'm grinding right now?
I think The Little Things was the hardest movie for me.
Really?
Yeah, it was just, the subject matter is very dark. And so you kind of have to live in that world. Mm-hmm. And there was a whole lot of prep. We were on a tight schedule, so you have to be as efficient as possible. But you've also got 3 amazing actors, and you don't want to, you want to take the time that's necessary to make something as great as they're giving you. You don't want to cut it short and say, no, well, we're running out of time, we got to move on.
Yeah.
You want to do that. But in allowing for that, sometimes, you have to keep shifting stuff around. We don't have time to do this scene today. We're going to do this one instead. And so you're constantly, your brain's going.
Did you have like higher expectations or preconceived ideas that were disturbed because this was your story?
I think I felt a lot of pressure because, I'd been with it 28 years. And also the fact that I had these 3 amazing actors. And you go, if it's bad, they're not going to blame Denzel. So it's going to be me. So you have to do, you prepare and over-prepare to the point that then it so well that you can let it go. So, I'd make my notes 3 or 4 different times on how I wanted to shoot a scene, different parts of the process, and then look at them the night before and do one more version of things to remember to make sure you get this, make sure you get this. I need a quick cut of this, make sure this. But then when you get there, almost always the list stays in your pocket because you've worked and prepared so much that you don't need to look at it. You know what it is.
Back and front.
And the fact that it stays in your pocket allows you to go, you know what, that's a better idea.
Yeah.
That's a better idea. Let's do that.
Spontaneity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Did the dark subject matter have an effect on you or the actors, I guess? Because I know like method actors talk about that a lot. Yeah,
I think it's, I don't know. You'd have to ask them.
Isn't Jared a method actor of sorts?
Yeah, he is. But I think in some way every actor is a method actor. They have a method and path that they use to create a character. Jared likes to stay in character, and we had lots of conversations. We didn't put Jared in a room with Rami and Denzel to talk about the script or the movie. I spent time going to Jared's house, and the 2 of us would talk about it forever and ever and ever, and it was fantastic because he does lots and lots of research. And then I would talk to Denzel. Then I would talk to Rami. Then I would talk to Rami and Denzel together. We would go through scenes, working. But Jared's playing a very specific character in this, and it's a different character than people have seen him play, I think. And it's also a different character than people meet in real life. So, you'd have to ask him about how long it took for Albert Sparma to wear off because he developed a different way of walking. He changed his voice. He had prosthetics. He had a nose bridge. He had, different color contacts. His hair was greasy. We put, pock marks on his face.
I remember seeing a Daily Mail thing on Snapchat or something, and it was like Jared Leto puts on a few pounds for new film. And it was like Jared Leto, dressed as Sparma. And I was just laughing because I knew that it was, obviously a suit of some kind.
Yeah, it was a little tummy thing there.
I was like, wow, people really are obsessed with the little things. No pun intended. Oh God.
The first time he came on the set, it was really interesting to watch Jared and his process, because when we were like on location and you see him, the first time you see him walking, and it's such a unique walk that he developed. And I said, that's a unique walk, and we had run through it a little bit, at his house, but he said, do you like it? And I said, yeah, I think I really like it. Because it's belly forward and the way he strides. And he said, it's based on someone, but I don't want to tell you because then it might make you laugh and then you won't look at it the same way. Think of it as Albert Sparma only. And I said, okay, fair enough. So when we wrapped, I said, okay, now you're going to tell me who you designed the walk after? And he said, sure, Kim Jong-un. And you look at it and you go, I'll be damned. That's Kim Jong-un.
I don't know if I've ever seen Kim Jong-un walk.
Google it. Just Google it and see something of him walking. There's lots of stuff of him walking. And then when you see the movie, you see Jared, you go, oh, yeah, that's pretty good.
So he was right by not telling you.
Yeah. He was absolutely right.
Wait, so you were at Jared Leto's house and he's just walking around, like showing you?
No, that was on set. You said, right?
But when you ran through,
yeah. It was like he was working on it at the house some, but it wasn't until he was in costume and in the makeup and everything, and I see him walking, that I realized it was like, I've never seen anyone walk like that before.
Yeah,
it's really interesting and I think good for Sparma. And then turns out it was, North Korean dictator.
Wow.
There you go.
That's amazing. Wasn't he, when you met him, still like kind of in character?
He stays in character.
Did I think I did shake his hand maybe? Well, I think I can't remember, but
yeah,
it was the kind of thing where it was like, we're not really going to interrupt him. But I think Dad brought him over and introduced him to my mom, Dave, and me, and he was uber creepy, extra long gaze, very strange. I was like, honestly, can this interaction be done? Because I feel so uncomfortable right now.
And the thing is it was funny because I would see him on location sometimes between takes. You're down, and instead of going back to his trailer or something, sometimes he would walk around and just talk or hang out and talk to people who were on the street watching. They didn't know he was an actor in the movie. They just thought he was an appliance repairman with his uniform on. And you could see people when he'd walk by him kind of averting their gaze, like, I'm not going to look at that guy, I don't want to get his attention. And then he would say good morning to someone or whatever, and sometimes they'd go, morning, and you could just see he made them uneasy. And he was using that because in his mind, Albert doesn't want to frighten anyone. Mm-hmm. He wants, he kind of is an outside the box guy, and he doesn't fit in, and he's never fit in probably, and he doesn't quite know why, because he thinks he's funny.
Yeah.
And nice.
Well, I think he also thinks it's kind of funny how strange his affect is. Mm-hmm. He knows, it's not like, oh, I'm so unassuming, I just think I'm funny. Like, Sparma knows that he has a strange affect and that it makes people uncomfortable, but he thinks that that's funny.
Yeah, it's just that he's kind of born with it. I mean, I think he thinks he's funny. He doesn't understand why other people don't think he's as funny as he thinks he is.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so Jared Leto was really just creeping people out on the sidewalk.
yeah, but then sometimes people would talk to him.
Yeah,
he would just strike a conversation with like a guy, and they're talking, and the guy's really animated and stuff, and Jared's talking back to him. I have no idea what they talked about, but it was really interesting. Yeah, he's a fantastic actor, as you know. And whatever, my job is to create an atmosphere for talented people to do their best work, and and so that goes for the same for Rami, the same for Denzel as. As
same
Jared.
For me, the same for Henry, the drill.
That's right. Stars of Saving Mr. Banks.
And The Blind Side.
And The Blind Side. That's
exactly.
right.
Oh, I forgot Liam was in that movie too.
Yeah. Liam and Gosh, yeah.
Lila.
Really?
Lila was
Wow.
in there.
Maddie Reed.
Maddie Reed.
Oh, yeah.
Whole squad.
Would you say, is that how you would describe the role of the director?
I think you have many, many roles. I mean, you have to wear one hat, but you have to accomplish a whole lot and try to do it as effortlessly as possible. You don't want to, never let them see you sweat kind of thing, but you've got a lot going on in your head. One of the things is, yes, to provide that atmosphere, both from a crew standpoint and the way you run a set and the people you hire to work with you to run a set that's efficient. And for my sets, I don't like a lot of screaming or running or craziness. I like people to be kind to one another. I want people to work really hard, to be efficient, and to, turn in a good day's work and be proud of it. I want everybody to be proprietary over the movie. I don't want it to be like, yeah, I did this movie. I don't know if it's any good or not. I want them to go, I'm doing this movie and I think it's going to be great. And I'm going to do everything I can to help make it be great. And you prepare that for the actors as well, just a calm set where they can kind of focus. That doesn't mean that, sometimes you can't have fun. You can have fun, and we're all friends. I mean, I've done so many movies with this crew. So, we know each other. We know each other's kids, so we can have fun. But when it's time to work, it's time to work. And when the subject matter is dark and the scenes are serious, you want that tone to kind of feel there, you want to feel that. You want everybody to be in that mindset in a weird way. And then the other thing is that you're the tone police. I mean, one, you have to think in advance about how this is all, you're cutting it together in your head as you're shooting it, but you're the tone police, because sometimes the tone can shift. You go, is this becoming too funny for this movie? I mean, everybody's laughing at it, but is this too funny? Should we cut this in half? So you're constantly, adjusting tone and making sure everybody's moving the same direction, which is where you want to be.
And this is kind of a funny, random little tidbit, but Will, you and my twin brother Henry and Ron Dog worked on one of my dad's sets.
We did.
Ya?
We worked under John, and it was amazing.
Baton Rouge.
Big learning experience for sure.
Yeah, it's 110 degrees in the summer in Baton Rouge, and yep.
That was the tone of that set.
Yeah, that was a sweat. Yeah. That was the tone.
And how was Will? Was he really
great? He was great.
Showing up.
No, all of them were great. From the start. I mean, it's one of those things when I called Phil Hardage, our first AD, who had worked with many times and is a great guy.
I love Phil.
Said, I've got these guys. My son and his two buddies are coming, and. He had the PAs, they're his, and they have to accomplish a lot for him. It's all about getting the shot and being efficient and staying on schedule and all those things. So to tell him, I've got 3 guys, is there any way you can take them on? That means that's 3 people that he can't hire, and he would usually hire from people that he trusted or had a lot of experience or whatever. So he said, sure, let's do it, and we'll throw them in there and see how they do. And I said, and by the way, if they don't perform up to your standards, we'll find something else for them to do. They can work in the office and deliver mail or something.
And we had no experience.
You had 0.
Yeah.
So the first day they came in and they got their walkies on and their headsets and they started learning.
Yeah, and we had to actually take a 4-hour Uber to get there because we almost missed the first day of work.
That was the best. That was the best story. When I got the call, I was waiting to come and pick you guys up at the Baton Rouge airport, and you go, "We're in Houston, and our flight got canceled, and we don't know what to do."
Ronald, hello. My name is Ronald Wong, and I am a VIP at United, and we need to get to Baton Rouge.
Platinum member. He would not have any of it. He was like, "This is absolutely ridiculous."
And then you got an Uber and made it. Yep. That's a long Uber ride.
It was. Let's wrap this up. Okay. Unless there's anything else you'd like to say.
No, thanks for having me.
Everyone, see The Little Things, January 29th. I'm really excited. I've seen one of the first cuts about 6 months ago, very early on. I'm super excited to see the next version.
It's very good, I think, and it opens internationally as well. It's in theaters where theaters are open, and for 1 month window on HBO Max, the same day and date, 1/29 is in theaters. So check it out.
Definitely on Apple too, right? You can buy it immediately on Apple.
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, you can hook it up through. You can go through Hulu or go through this or go through. There are different ways to get to HBO Max.
Oh, totally.
But,
It's
But I'm sure that's out above my pay grade. It's out there. You guys can find it.
Yeah.
Well, this was amazing. Thank you for coming on Vibes for Capita, episode number 2. My first actual guest. So besides me and Rob just dicking around.
I'm happy I could bring some estrogen into the room.
Yeah. We're gonna bring Willa on for many more, if not full time. But
there we go.
All right. Thank you for watching.
Thanks.
Bye.